The Board of Commissioners to order at 6:18. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioners Cavell,
Here in Ferndale.
thank you. Charles,
Present.
Gershenson,
Here.
Gingell, Hoffman,
Here.
Jackson, Joliet, Kokendorfer,
Here.
Kowal,
Here.
Kuhn,
Here.
Long,
Here.
Lubes,
Here.
Markham,
Here.
McGilvray,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Moss,
Here.
Nelson, Powell,
Here.
Spiz,
Present.
Weipert,
Here.
Woodward.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The invocation this evening will be led by the Honorable Penny Lubes. So if I call Commissioner Penny Lubes to the podium here, if everyone can rise and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Let us pray. Dear God, open our eyes, our ears, and our heart. Make us aware of the world around us and the people around us. Let us see those who are in need. Open room in our heart to feel compassion. Give us the time, energy, and patience to truly listen to our neighbors. Give us the courage to speak the truth. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of Oakland County. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill. Help us to speak with charity and restraint. Give us a spirit of service. Remind us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and to treat all people with dignity. We are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, and its challenges. May we be challenged to give our best always. Let us worship God and love one another. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Lubes. Next up, I needed a motion to approve the minutes from the June 30th, 2021 meeting. Motion by Joliet, seconded by Nelson. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the minutes are approved unanimously. Next, we will move to approval of the agenda, and I will recognize Commissioner Gershenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the agenda and pursuant to Section 13, Part C of the rules to amend the agenda and the board's normal order of business to include a second public comment period as item 14 after new and miscellaneous business. The purpose of this addition is to limit the first public comment period to only those items which are on the regular or consent agendas for this meeting. The added second public comment period will be open to commentary on any subject which is not on the regular or consent agendas for this meeting. During both public comment periods, each person is limited to 3 minutes and must not use offensive language or personally attack any individual.
Moved by Commissioner Gershenson, seconded by Commissioner Charles. Any discussion? Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually don't have any problem with this, but it's kind of like short notice, and there's a lot of people in the audience here tonight, and I think they're finding out just at the last minute they won't be able to speak till the meeting's over. Is this something we could do with a little notice, maybe at the next meeting?
I mean, to that point, I mean, I think that this is kind of a one-time measure here, and looking for, I mean, we can ask our LIGO committee to look at a long-term solution for it. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay.
Nay. Could
Madam
we have a
Clerk?
roll call vote, please?
Yep. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll on approval of the agenda?
On approval of the agenda, Commissioners Charles? Yes. Gershenson?
Yes.
Gingell? Yes. Hoffman?
No?
Jackson? Joliet? No. Kokendorfer?
No.
Kowal?
No.
Kuhn?
No.
Long?
Yes.
Lubes?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Moss?
No.
Nelson? Powell?
Yes.
Spiz?
No.
Whitebert?
No.
Woodward?
Yes.
Cavell?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 yeas, 8 nays.
Sufficient number voted in the affirmative. The agenda is approved. This will next move us to communications. Madam Clerk, are there any communications received by the board?
Yes.
There are a few.
We have a few tonight. The first is dated July 1st. Dear Clerk Brown, pursuant to Michigan compiled laws, section 48.37, a county treasurer shall appoint a deputy and, quote, all appointments and revocations of appointments shall be in writing, end quote. I am writing to inform you as a custodian of county records that the following individuals are hereby appointed as deputy treasurers for Oakland County. Jody Weissler Defoe, Chief Deputy Treasurer, Ross Gavin, Deputy Treasurer, Jill Robinson, Deputy Treasurer, Natalie Neff, Deputy Treasurer, Laura Schmidt, Deputy Treasurer, Christy Howard, Deputy Treasurer, Diane Rourke, Deputy Treasurer, Rita Nafso, Deputy Treasurer, William Wandry, Deputy Treasurer, Scott Vest, Deputy Treasurer, Jessica Oosterhouse, Deputy Treasurer. I respectfully request that this communication be shared with the Oakland County Board of Commissioners and read into the official record. Thank you very much. Sincerely, Robert Wittenberg, Oakland County Treasurer. The next is a communication dated July 15th. Please accept this message as my formal resignation from the Oakland County Historical Commission. New family and work requirements do not allow me to contribute the time and attention that I believe the commission needs. Thank you for your support over these last years. I've very much appreciated it. May I kindly ask you to distribute this email to those who need to know. Best regards, Melissa Luginski, OCHC Chair. Next is dated July 20th to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. Ladies and gentlemen, please be advised of the following changes to the Airport Committee. Kristen Nelson has resigned, and I, David Woodward, will complete her term ending December 31st, 2022. Sincerely, David T. Woodward, Chairman, Oakland County Board of Commissioners. Next is dated July 22nd. Ladies and gentlemen, please accept this letter as notification that I am appointing a housing study group. The housing study group will be organized under the provisions of the board rules. The members of the study group will be Commissioner Charlie Cavell, Commissioner Angela Powell, Commissioner Janet Jackson, Commissioner Bob Hoffman. The study group will present a report with recommendations to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. Sincerely, David T. Woodward, Chairman, Oakland County Board of Commissioners. Next one is also dated July 22nd to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. Ladies and gentlemen, please be advised of the following appointments to the Oakland County Human Trafficking Task Force Core Group 2021 to 2022 pursuant to Miscellaneous Resolution 21031. Representative from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Wendy Reyes, Alternate Deputy Josephine Fagan. Representative from the Oakland County Health and Human Services Department, Leanne Stafford, Alternate Lisa McKay Chazon. Representative from the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. Representative from the Oakland County Circuit Court, Family Youth Assistance, Mary Schusterbeyer. Alternates Liz, Shizmadia and Nikki Keller, and I apologize if I didn't say that right. Representative from Oakland Schools, Susan Benson. Representative from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Ivana Maplanka. Alternate Tom Shire. Representatives from a Victim Services Agency, Care House, Yvonne Cameron, alternate Tricia Schuster, Common Ground, Allison Mercer, alternates Alexandra Wyatt, Brooke Bellinger, Elizabeth McCune. Dr. Manu K. Malhotra, Chief Medical Officer, Henry Ford, West Bloomfield Hospital, and Northwest Market. Representatives as a survivor or from a safe house for survivors of human trafficking, Sonia Acosta, Centro Multicultural La Familia, Edie Franklin, Sanctum House, and Fadawa Harrell. Outreach Liaison, Michigan Abolitionist Program, Kathy Maitland. Thank you, Commissioner Janet Jackson, Chairperson, Oakland County Human Trafficking Task Force. And then the next 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 communications are all in regards to grant applications that all exceed the $50,000 amount for the purposes. So I'll start with the first paragraph and I'll get into the details of each one, but just so I don't have to read the same paragraphs over and over. So they all start the same. To the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, please accept this letter as notification that I have exercised the authority granted to the chairperson of the board to approve grant applications in excess of $50,000 for the purposes of meeting a submission deadline. Due to the grantor deadlines and the board's grant submission process and calendar, it was not possible to submit the application for full board consideration in accordance with our normal procedures. I have authorized the submission of the following grant applications. I'm going to say applications. So the first one, the name is Fiscal Year 2022 Victim Rights. The amount is for $766,249. The grant application deadline was July 14th, 2021. The second one, Fiscal Year 2022 County Veterans Service Fund Grant for the amount of $497,221. That grant application deadline was July 16th, 2021. The next one, Fiscal Year 2021 Body Worn Camera BWC Policy and Implementation Program to support law enforcement agencies. The amount is $2,755,210 with a 50% grant match required. And the grant application deadline was July 26th, 2021. The next one, Fiscal Year 2021 Community Policing Development Micro Grant in the amount of $76,796. Deadline was July 8th, 2021. And finally, the Community Navigator Pilot Program, CNPP, in the amount of $2,500,000. The grant application deadline, July 23rd, 2021. Sincerely, David T. Woodward, Chairman, Oakland County Board of Commissioners. That's all of them.
That's all of them. Can I get a motion to receive the communications? Moved by Commissioner Hoffman, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? All in favor of receiving the communications, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the communications are received unanimously. Next up, we have a presentation that will kick off arguably one of the most important duties and responsibilities of this board. We are fortunate this evening to have a number of special guests, chief among them, to present the 2022-2024 County Executive Recommended Budget Overview is Oakland County's County Executive Dave Coulter.
Good evening, everyone. Always great to be back in this chamber where I enjoyed serving for 8 years. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I'm happy to be here with you tonight to present my administration's proposed 3-year balanced budget to begin October 1st. Now, not only is this quite a different setting compared to last summer when we were in the throes of dealing with the coronavirus and working remotely for the most part, but we're also getting to a better place physically and mentally too in our response to COVID-19, and I want to start with that just a little bit. First, by the numbers. We've had more than 102,000 cases of COVID-19 in the county and more than 2,200 deaths. That's a toll that's hard to grasp even now. And we pulled out all the stops to get as many people vaccinated as possible. We've hosted everything from large-scale vaccination clinics to community-based locations to administer those shots. We've gone into churches, fire stations, parks, and even directly into people's homes where invited. We've offered $50 gift cards as an incentive, and while more than 74,000 people have gotten at least a first dose, the clamor for shots has slowed considerably, as I'm sure you know. We are so close in Oakland County to hitting 70% of our residents vaccinated. In fact, 69.8% of our population, 16 and older, have gotten at least their first dose. And I feel like there's a palpable sense that we're going to be okay and we're going to get back to this new normal soon. But the Delta variant is very real, and it's caused cases to rise in recent weeks, and it makes it clearer to me and our staff that we're not done with COVID yet. Now, while Delta variant is in the county, so is the solution. And vaccines are easier to get than ever from the county and at providers across the county and this state. So I want to encourage residents that are watching to please do that. Now, our economy is rebounding as well. We've recovered about 60% of the roughly 150,000 jobs that were lost due to COVID. And some businesses have emerged from COVID-19 stronger and more nimble. Just last week, I visited Cadillac Products Automotive Company in Troy, where this fourth-generation, family-owned supplier of plastic packaging for the auto industry unveiled their latest spin-off business, and they call it ProTech USA, right here in Troy, in Oakland County. And it was born out of the pandemic and helped along by funding from Oakland County. This is one of the positive stories, I think, coming out of the pandemic. And started when Maggie Williams-Gratson, a nurse at Sinai Grace Hospital, asked her dad, Robert Williams, the president of Cadillac Products, if he could come up with some big plastic bags that the hospital staff could use to augment their limited supply of gowns that ran out, frankly, in the early days of the pandemic. Robert said he could do better, and within 48 days, the company had come up with a design for plastic gowns that would serve as a PPE lifeline to frontline workers across the nation. The company has since made nearly 1 million gowns and has been able to not only diversify its business, but provide a critical staple for our healthcare workers. I should also mention they donated 3,000 of those gowns to Oakland County for our nurses and our long-term care workers as well. So very generous company. Don Seeley, the CEO of Cadillac Products, told me that it quickly became clear that the company needed to come up with a made-in-America long-term solution to the problem of woefully inadequate supplies of PPE. Oakland County's $90,000 grant to this company helped them develop the manufacturing lines for the gowns, and it's just one example of how the county leaned in to come up with solutions to problems caused by the pandemic. For many companies, that funding was an essential tool for survival, but we're not totally back to normal. Some businesses and residents continue to struggle. It'll take some time, frankly, to recover the remaining jobs that we've lost in the past 2 years. Our economic forecasters, however, from the University of Michigan have given us some good news, and you may have heard this at our Economic Outlook luncheon. And that is that they predict that the unemployment rate in Oakland County will reach its lowest point, 2.4% by 2023. So we're moving in the right direction. But the recovery has been different for different sectors, and I think you're all aware of that. Workers in the service industries, like food service and retail, they need additional opportunities, which is why the Oakland 80 initiative, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, is even more important in my mind than ever before. So let's talk about the budget specifically. First of all, I want you to know it's balanced over the next 3 years and is what I would call a fiscally prudent plan that not only reduces and ultimately eliminates the use of the fund balance for ongoing operations. But it also strives, of course, to maintain our coveted AAA bond rating, which we just reaffirmed again this spring. And despite, I want to say this, because I hear this a lot, despite the impression that we're flush with revenue from COVID-19 relief and a healthy fund balance, this is really an austere and realistic budget that represents a true spending plan based only on the level of revenue that can be expected to come into the county in the long term. It takes into account the costs of adopting the compensation study initiated by the previous administration and approved unanimously by this board in December. While implementing the recommendations in this study will cost about $9 million a year, I agree with this board that it's an important way to invest in our workforce and attract and keep top talent in the future. As a result of this, however, we've asked all the departments across the county to tighten their belts over the next 3 to 5 years so we can get to a point where we no longer have a structural deficit that is fixed every year with a planned use of our rainy day fund. That's just not going to happen anymore under my watch. And by the 2023 fiscal year, I'm very excited to report that in this plan, the structural deficit will be eliminated. Now, I have to thank all the departments that identified efficiencies and helped eliminate vacant positions. We had, especially as employees left during the voluntary early separation incentive program to help us reach these budget goals. And I really think that's something that we should all celebrate. It was a tough task, but they did it. Now, even while we've been asking our departments to help us reach this true spending plan, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the important and targeted investments that we've made on our key initiatives that I believe are just as important to contribute to the long-term health and success of our county. We're continuing to build out our Health 360 plans by expanding quality and affordable health and dental care at our clinics in Southfield and Pontiac in collaboration with Honor Community Health. I know you're familiar with that. Now, since the Southfield office opened last summer and Pontiac just this last May, nearly 1,000 people have made 1,300 visits to these two clinics. Coupled with the wraparound services provided by Oakland Livingston Human Services Agency, at these clinics, right in the clinics, our most vulnerable residents are getting the help that they need in other areas as well, such as food and rent assistance programs, navigating how to sign up for low-cost insurance, and referrals to other resources throughout the county. We're also looking to expand the Health 360 programs to include behavioral and mental health services, which are critical. They were critical before the pandemic, and I believe have become even more so because of COVID-19. Now, here with me tonight are some of the remarkable members of our health division. So I want to introduce to you and acknowledge Public Health Administrators Kate Guzman, Calandra Green, and Sarah Stoddard, and Health Program Coordinator Marcy Wiegers. If you're here. They've literally been on the front lines of this pandemic since March 10th, 2020, which was the first reported case of COVID in Oakland County. And for the past 16 months, they've been tireless and dedicated to the task of keeping our residents healthy, safe, and well-informed. But their work is not done, so the applause are nice, but get back to work. Because besides continuing the vaccination program, they're also key players in expanding the services we're offering at our health clinics and will be at the forefront of providing health care to our most vulnerable residents. So again, I just can't thank them enough, and let's give them one more round of a hand to them and their teammates, frankly. So let me talk about Oakland 80, because I also believe that Oakland 80's goals, and remember that's getting 80% of our adult population with a college degree or industry-recognized certification by 2030, is achievable with some of the programs that we've launched in this budget and are planning to begin with federal funding from the American Rescue Plan. Our financial coaching program is helping people like Grace, who told us after our meeting with her and our dedicated employees over at the Workforce Development Office that she and her husband have been able to replenish their savings after he lost his job, his food service job during the pandemic. We're helping to steer residents to training programs at Oakland Community College and other educational opportunities. And we're going to be hiring up to a dozen what they call career navigators to help our residents chart educational goals and career paths so that they can get those good paying jobs. Jennifer Llewellyn, by the way, is here. I know you know her, but I want to recognize Jennifer Llewellyn, who is the director of our workforce development work. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We're going to continue with criminal justice reform initiatives, such as the Clean Slate program, which is helping our returning citizens get their records expunged so they can get jobs without worrying that past mistakes might haunt them. In the first 2 months of the program, just the first 2 months, more than 1,200 Oakland County residents have submitted applications, and their court hearings start next month. In addition, there's money in this budget to create a 3-person conviction integrity unit in the Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald's office. I want you to know that Karen has my full and enthusiastic support for this program to ensure that our residents who may have been wrongly convicted get the chance to gain the justice that may have eluded them. Now, we're also on track to hire the Environmental Sustainability Officer, and you'll see that in the budget as well. Of course, this position was approved by the board earlier this year. So this employee working with the board and our staff, will help craft our plans for a more environmentally friendly county government campus in the short term, and help us develop policy that will create strategies so that we can reach our goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 in Oakland County. Now, one need only look at the front page of any newspaper these days to see that the need to beef up our cybersecurity is critical. Ransomware attacks are crippling cities, institutions, manufacturers, and the power grid. We can't let criminals put our county's computer systems or residents' personal data at risk from sophisticated cyber attacks. So, a $1.5 million investment in the county's IT systems is included in this budget for added cybersecurity protections. And finally, I want to mention one more item that you'll see that's new in this budget. It's a small investment. It's only $35,000. But consolidating an incident management team in the county's emergency management division will help us to respond to emergency situations like natural disasters, fires, hazardous material spills, or even a pandemic in a quicker and more efficient fashion. An incident management team is now run through a group of fire departments throughout the county. But with us here tonight is the Chief of Emergency Management Team, Rob Seeley. Where are you, Rob? There he is. Rob Seeley. And he has shared with me that if COVID-19 pandemic has taught us anything, it's that a quick and collaborative response is key to containing disasters. Let's pause for a moment and acknowledge the incredible work, not only of Rob, but of all of the emergency management employees and everything that they did to help keep this county safe in the past year. Thank you. And finally, I want to acknowledge the board. Having been on this board, I know how important your role is. And frankly, the board has shown remarkable unity, in my opinion, when it comes to dealing with this pandemic. We have spoken with one voice, and I think that's been very helpful. You unanimously approved our spending plans for the CARES money that we got from the federal government last year. And right before the 4th of July, you again unanimously approved our first batch of $27.5 million in funding proposals for the American Rescue Plan dollars that we got this summer. While we're still dealing with the impact of COVID-19, with some remote working continuing and vaccination campaigns ongoing, as I mentioned, it's also time to look to the future, dealing with both the lingering acute needs of our residents and businesses, as well as addressing the chronic problems that we knew were there before the pandemic, but have been exacerbated in the last 16 months. With that $27.5 million, we're going to establish more comprehensive mental health services for our residents and students, provide continuing and necessary support for our businesses and residents, and educational support and training for our young adults who are still looking to carve out their future. We'll also deliver legal assistance for families facing eviction and foreclosure. But as we get the rest of the ARP dollars and we start to look forward toward these chronic conditions, I'll be working with you and presenting proposals to address those chronic needs that, frankly, have been neglected for too long. These programs will set us up for what I believe will be transformational change in our county that will provide economic security into the future, address the disparities that exist in Oakland County, and add to the quality of life that all of us enjoy in this incredible county that we get to call home. Finally, I should mention we do have a long tradition of bipartisan support for our budgets in Oakland County, and I hope that that will continue with this fiscal plan that I've highlighted tonight. So with that, I want to introduce to you our county's Management and Budget Director, Kyle Jen, to give you more specific details about the budget itself. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's an honor to appear before you for the first county budget that I've been involved with in this role. I'm sure this part of the presentation is why you all came tonight, lots of charts. So whenever we're talking about a budget, we have to talk about revenue before we talk about spending. I'm going to walk through some of the key assumptions on property tax revenues in particular as our largest revenue source in this budget. Despite the effects of COVID on the economy, the housing market here and elsewhere remains strong. Compared to 2 years ago, existing home sales are up about 20%, and the average sale price is actually up over 6% from a year ago. So compared to the budget that was adopted last year, the assumptions on both taxable value growth and inflation, which is a key part of how much of that taxable value growth the county captures, are significantly higher than a year ago. So as a result of that, the revenue estimates in this budget are about $5 million per year higher than the estimates that were in the budget adopted last year. Going forward, we're using cautious economic assumptions that result in annual property tax revenue growth of about 3% per year as we continue to monitor changes in economic trends and risks. This chart shows you the longer-term history on property tax revenue. You can see the large decline on the blue line after the Great Recession and the steady growth since then, which has been somewhat limited by the proposal A cap on taxable value growth. You can see as we go into the green projected portion, in the next couple of years, we expect to get finally back to that peak level from 2008. Adjusted for inflation now, however, on the yellow line, you can see we're about 25% below that peak still. This chart shows the county operating millage rate over time and the various rollbacks that have occurred because of the Headley Amendment. You can see in the first box highlighted at the top, the rate adopted by this board for the current year of 4.0132. As we go to 2022, we're currently projecting that that rate will need to drop below 4.0 and have fully accounted for that in this budget that's before you. Stepping back up to total general fund revenue, which is estimated at $482 million for FY 2022. The property tax is about 55% of that. Again, we expect about 3% growth going forward. Based on current assumptions, we expect that state sources and charges for services, however, are going to remain roughly flat. So our total projection in general fund revenue is only about 2% per year. So with that, I'm going to pause for a moment and hand things over to April Lynch to provide a quick update on some of the workforce planning measures that were adopted last year.
Good evening. It's great to be back with everybody. So as you know, without revenue, you don't have expenditures, right? So one of the things that's important to note, as I always tell folks, is that 65% of our budget is personnel costs. So therefore, that's why we had to have a really strong plan for making sure that we have and manage all of our workforce planning needs. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, making sure that we have a friendly reminder of what we had talked about previously this year and how that impacts our budget. So again, as Executive Coulter had mentioned, the previous administration had a compensation plan done. We had started that in 2018. When we did that, we found that that our average compensation was about 4% below market. And so we felt it was very important to make sure that we provided wages that were fair and equitable throughout the county and making sure that we could compete with private sector, as our market has changed quite a bit, and we are competing not only, it used to be with just other governments, but now we are competing with the private industry. So we want to make sure that we have the right plan in place to ensure that we have quality employees that we can bring into the mix, but also retain, and making sure that we keep our employees the valuable history that they have here with the county. And the third piece of that is to ensure that we have an ability to continue to attract diversity within the organization as well. But there's a second reason that it's important that we created this workforce plan, not only to pay for the comp study, as Executive Coulter had mentioned. It costs about $8.7 million to implement, and will cost an average of 9 to 11 every year, depending on how we do general salary increases. So while we look for that and create that framework, we also have to keep in mind that the previous budget that we had didn't really allow for investments in programs, in people, and in our facilities. So one of the things that we wanted to make a goal with our workforce plan was not only to address the compensation of our employees, but also to create space for programs to meet the needs. And you can see throughout this budget with budget priorities as we continue forward with administration and the board's thoughts and ideas and programs that they would like to participate with, we needed to create space with that. And so when we take a look at that, we need to make sure that we have the budget to be able to do that. So coming forward to beyond programs is the ability to pay for our facilities and for our campus. So right now, as it stands, we have about $200 million in capital improvements. And right now we're going through an audit, making sure that we have for sure captured all of our capital needs for the next few years, and we anticipate that that need will grow. So that was very important for us to make sure that we created space for that. So what we had done when we brought the comp study forward to the board is created what we call a workforce management plan. And as we started to take a look at that, we wanted to see all of the ways that we could actually address the cost as it relates to our workforce base. So one of the things that we did, as a friendly reminder, is that we focused primarily on a voluntary separation program, which allowed folks who had been here for a long period of time the ability to be paid out for their years of service. They received 1 year for up to 26 years that they worked here. We had employees that were able to extend for up to 2 years to help with that workforce plan. In particular, we had one department lose 45 employees, so they needed to be able to stage that out a little bit, as well as making sure that we were able to hire some of those folks back. We were also we were given the grace by the board to also look at this as a workforce management plan that would cover a few years. So we knew that we couldn't make those cuts right away. So we have a plan in place, and you'll see throughout the budget, throughout the next few years, that we have space each year that we continue our workforce reduction plan. In total, when we did that program, we had 267 employees who took advantage of the VSIP program. And we had, with this budget, you can see we already took advantage of that by eliminating 72 full-time positions and 43 part-time positions. And throughout and that for this year alone was saved $7.1 million in total and $5.7 million in the general fund. Future budgets, we also have, again, in that ability to plan. As some of our folks, again, are leaving maybe next year or the year after, we have a budget that reflects a $6.5 million in annual workforce savings. So you can see that throughout the whole budget process. And then also, I know that there's probably a lot of details that the board would like to know, and I'm working on a formal report to show you like where those employees actually took the VSIP and what that looks like going over for the next few years as well. The other piece besides workforce planning that we focused on as it relates to just the actual compensation reductions is we wanted to take a look at healthcare savings and potentially for fund balance support. We created an employee task force that was dedicated to total rewards. We have about 30 employees who have been participating, and we've worked through with them some ideas that we have on to reduce some of our healthcare costs. And so our goal this year, I'm hoping to be able to provide information to the board later in August with a goal of $4 million for this year and subsequent savings over the next few years as well. And that has been a process that we've had with about, like I said, 30 employees, and they've done an amazing job in providing really awesome input to help us pave the way for that. And we're excited to say, as Executive Coulter said, that the current plan requires fund balance only for this first year at $4.6 million. So we've hit the majority of our targets.
Thank you, April. I'm going to talk now about the approach we took overall to balancing this budget for the long term. Before we get to the numbers, I just want to emphasize the concepts of structural balance and one-time funding. As we move forward, it's this administration's goal to ensure that our ongoing expenditures in terms of payroll for county employees and all the other costs that come with providing county services are no higher than our ongoing revenues from property tax revenues and other things we can count on a yearly basis. That provides confidence, that our county operations are sustainable for the long term. While we do have a healthy fund balance, much of that balance is held as a rainy day fund and should only be used if it's raining. And for any dollars above that rainy day fund level, investment should be clearly one-time in nature and not raise our ongoing spending level. This table here shows the key spending factors that affected the construction of the FY 2022 budget. These tie back to two of the goals that County Executive Coulter talked about in terms of building and maintaining a competitive workforce. The first item is the $9 million cost of the compensation study that April just talked about. And then as we move forward, we want to ensure we don't lose ground in terms of providing competitive compensation. So rather than the 1% growth in total compensation costs that's been assumed historically, this budget assumes a 2% increase going out. The second goal is ensuring that this budget is a true spending plan and accounts for all anticipated spending needs for providing county services. You can see three items there that we identified as we reviewed that have at times in the past been dealt with mid-year or at the end of the year, and we want to bake those in up front, including overtime costs for sheriff deputies at the jail, our core IT infrastructure needs, like our servers and county networks that our IT system runs on. And then finally, we did identify a couple of internal service funds where shortfalls have built up. So to address those costs, which total about $20 million, we did ask each department and elected official to provide a plan to reduce their general fund work costs by 4%, through the elimination of vacant positions and reducing positions over time through attrition. All through attrition, this plan does not include any employee layoffs, as well as identifying other operational efficiencies and beyond our direct general fund departments, we asked our IT and facility departments to do the same because their costs ultimately get passed on to departments and paid with general fund. As those plans came back from each department, the administration reviewed those plans, for the most part accepted those plans, did identify places where plans needed to be adjusted in order to protect important public health and safety measures. After those adjustments, the general fund reductions across all departments total $7 million. And as April mentioned, we do assume additional reductions going forward as we continue to ask departments to identify opportunities for efficiencies and savings. That $7 million actually translates to about a 2% reduction in general fund workforce costs, so we do still have some work to be done here. There were a few select departments where a determination was made that reductions were not advisable and that modest revenue enhancements were the better option. So that includes the animal shelter, the medical examiner, our purchasing division, and the patrol services provided to various local governments by the sheriff's office. In this case, our guiding principles were that we want these revenues to fund the cost of the services and no more, and to ensure that our fees are competitive with the counties around us. So when you add all that up, the fiscal year 2022 budget contains $965.5 million in proposed appropriations. When you count all funds and just from the general fund, it's $482 million. The chart on the right shows you the breakdown of that $482 million consistent with past budgets. Employee compensation continues to be almost 2/3 of those expenditures. So as we think out further, This county has a long history of having a 5-year fiscal plan. This document provides a summary of the 5-year fiscal plan that this budget is built around. So let me just walk you down the columns here. So the first column is for fiscal year 2022. You can see we have estimated ongoing revenues of $474 million. We have ongoing expenditures of $478.6 million. So we do have a structural gap remaining there of $4.6 million. We're also proposing $3.5 million of one-time expenditures I'll talk about in a moment. So that would be a total use of fund balance of $8 million in fiscal year 2022. So the good news, as County Executive Coulter indicated, as we move into fiscal year 2023, you can see, on the top line, our revenue growth is assumed at about 2%, but if we follow through on our plan on the expenditure side and keep expenditure growth limited to about 1%, we reach structural balance in fiscal year 2023. Now, I should emphasize that the 16 in that circle is $16,000, not $16 million. So no one's eyes get too big, but you can see as we do go out in that structural surplus line, we do start to build some room in the budget to start addressing those spending needs that April mentioned, and I'm going to talk a little more about in a slide or two here. This chart, I'll explain slowly. It's a little complicated. This shows the assumed use of fund balance for the upcoming 2 fiscal years in the 5-year plans over the last 3 years. So if you go back to 2019, the 5-year plan that was adopted at that time assumed that there would be $22 million in fund balance used in fiscal year 2022 and $16 million in 2023. With the plan that was adopted last year and with the plan that's before you now, we bring that planned use of fund balance down to about $5 million in fiscal year 2022, and again, it's eliminated in fiscal year 2023. A portion of that is a function of including favorability factors in the budget based on historical year-end numbers, but this also reflects our efforts across the county to right-size our spending. In terms of the total general fund balance, we project at the end of fiscal year 2022, the general fund balance would be $242 million. That's equal to just over 50% of our annual general fund budget. Later this evening, you're going to consider some changes to the county's fund balance policy to strengthen it. That includes increasing the minimum fund balance level from 20% to 25%, and explicitly designating that as our rainy day fund that we're not going to dip into unless there's an economic downturn that causes county revenues to fall. We are suggesting that above that 25%, we hold an additional 5% for other budgetary risks like a natural disaster that might be out there, and then require that any appropriations of fund balance above that target level of 30% be for things that have, that are clearly one-time in nature, have long-term return on investment, and are reviewed by the administration and the board through the annual budget process. So just to expand a little bit on what April said about future spending needs that are out there over the longer term, on the facility side, we do recognize in this plan to increase the transfer out of the general fund to deal with a backlog of some, a large number of routine maintenance projects across the campus facility, going from $3 million in fiscal year 2022 to $6 million in 2025. This budget does list a total number of requested major facility construction or renovation projects of about $260 million. We recognize that we're not going to be able to fund all of those projects immediately. However, we do plan to vet and prioritize those and determine the most effective way to fund the highest priority projects as resources become available. On the information technology side, This budget includes $3.5 million for one-time smaller information technology projects. At the top of that list is the platform that the county's website runs on, through which residents access a large number of services that's due to be replaced. We expect to be evaluating any larger IT projects out there as we go forward. A good example there is the circuit court case management system, which is almost 50 years old, which is a hard thing to believe about an IT system, and we'll bring back a recommendation on that down the road. All of these projects, you know, that are one time, I would emphasize, are going to be vetted by the administration for long-term return on investment and brought to the board for your review and approval. And then before I wrap up, you know, I should highlight our major budget risk that we're still monitoring. That's the Raffaelli case, which is a case that deals with the state statute around excess proceeds from the sales of foreclosed properties. Oakland County's case continues to make its way through the court system, as do cases affecting all other counties in the state. We currently have a $10 million liability booked for this. We're waiting for a decision in terms of whether the last decision is retroactive or not. There is an additional potential liability of up to $40 million, which would be $50 million total, you know, in a worst case scenario there. Fund balance has been assigned to address that potential liability. However, it would reduce our total reported general fund balance. So we will continue to monitor that and any other risks and keep you abreast of any adjustments to the budget that are needed to ensure long-term financial stability. And with that, I'm going to hand things back over to County Executive Coulter to wrap us up.
If you have questions, I only know this much. You know, I just have to say, by the way, thank you for approving the appointment of this guy right here. He has been an invaluable member of the team, and I'm really glad to have him overseeing our budget. It's a lot to take in a short amount of time. You got the big book, so you'll go home and read those from cover to cover, I'm sure. I just want to make 3 points, which are up on here. Number one, this budget proposal takes a major step towards realigning the county's workforce and budget so that we can retain and attract best possible employees. It's not cheap, but it's important. Second, this is a true spending plan, you've heard us use that phrase, which avoids having to amend the budget to fill holes midway through the year if we do this right. And finally, we're recommending targeted investments in key areas that I hope we agree will improve the lives of our residents and ensure the long-term success of our county. So with that, thank you for your time, and we are open to questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Executive Coulter.
Yeah.
How about a round of applause? Thank you, Executive Coulter, laying out a plan that maintains a long tradition of strong fiscal management in this county, but as well as the important investments to not only build for a more resilient county, but to address core priorities that are necessary to meeting the needs of the people that we serve. At this time, now, just like for everyone listening and to remind all commissioners, finance at the next finance committee meeting, we'll go a little bit more in depth in all of this, and this formally kicks off our budget process with the goal of making certain that we have an adopted budget, an annual appropriations budget, as well as the 3-year budget and the 5-year fiscal planning adopted by October 1. But we can take a couple questions now for executive and a couple on both sides of the aisle if there are any questions. Commissioner Gershenson.
Well, I will just make a comment that it's pretty incredible after going through one of the absolute worst years in my lifetime that we are in the fiscal shape that we're in. I'm so proud of your administration, of our staff, and I think the key word for me was collaboration. And we all worked so hard to help our residents and our businesses work through this, and we have more work to do, and we're all looking forward to continuing that collaboration through the next round of federal funding. So thank you all.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Any other,
That was
Commissioner
a tough
Gingell?
one.
Oh,
We can
sorry.
go softer than that if you like. Yes, Mike?
Commissioner Gingell.
I'll go easy. I would just say that I'd like to commend the county executive and his team. Looking at the budget, I like the fact that driving to keep it operationally sound and not looking to increase expenditures at a rate that exceeds revenues, and in fact, looking for ways to reduce expenditures to fund other expenditures. Operationally, those are foundational things that I think keep us on equal footing. May not be aligned with every single piece. Items hopefully we'll be able to discuss, like the local sheriff's patrol contract increase and other things. But I appreciate what you've laid out here, and to me, we should all be proud of the foundation that's here. So thank you to you and your team.
Thank you. I served 6 of my 8 years as a commissioner on the finance team, so I learned these principles well. I brought them to Ferndale and have tried to preserve them here, so appreciate the comment.
Any further questions? Going once, going twice. All right, well, County Executive
Thanks again,
Coulter,
everybody.
thank
Appreciate
you
it.
to
Good to
you
see
and
you
your
all.
entire team. All right, and to the Finance Chair, Commissioner Gwen Markham, and all the Finance Committee members, go to work. This will bring us, a second here. And for those who are watching at home, the slide presentation will be on our website and all that information accessible. Computer decided to go to sleep here. All right, we'll move to item 8 on the agenda. This is the opportunity for public comment as the agenda was adopted for any items that are on the consent agenda or the regular agenda. This is the opportunity for the members of the public to come and speak to any of those items. We will have time after we take action on the consent and the regular agenda for any other topics not on today's agenda. But if you have any public comment, again, on the consent agenda or the regular agenda, if you can come to the mic at the back of the auditorium here. If you could state your, I have a couple of, names, I'll go through these first, but if you didn't sign up, I don't know if there's another list out there, but if you didn't sign up, if you just come up to the mic, give your name, the community that you're from, and then please keep your comment to 3 minutes. We've got a little clock up here to help keep you on track, to afford opportunity for everyone who does want to speak on, in this public comment on items on the agenda. If they're, if you hit the 3-minute limit, I'll ask you kindly to wrap up your comments so that we can move through and, like I say, make sure that everyone has an opportunity to address the commission. So again, this is public comment for items on the agenda. I will start, I'll call Richard Ensley.
Mr. Chair, if I may, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt. Is there any way we can get the agenda put up on the screen so they can see what's on consent and regular agenda? I'm not sure everybody has a copy of it. Is that possible?
Sure. Yes, the question is, we'll see if we can get it on the agenda, get it on the screen behind us so that everyone can see the agenda. I think there, if you've got devices, if you go to our Oakland County Commission website, the packet, the agenda and or the packet is on there easily. Andrea, I think, is going to help to see if we can throw it up behind us here. I got Richard Ensley first. Richard here. I believe Michael Gonzalez. Okay. Connie Johnson. Tori Zilch. Welcome.
My name is Connie Johnson. I do not have a comment on any of the agenda items other than I would like to state how displeased I am for the commission to change the order of the agenda simply to make all of these good people who are taxpayers who pay for that 65% of the revenue that covers the wages of the good people working here to make us wait. But we will wait, so thank you.
Thank you. And I will call on you in the next public comment section, Ms. Johnson. Tori Zilch. Wait. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm from Lake Orion, and I became involved in following what the Board of Commissioners was involved with doing in April. Since then, I'm extraordinarily concerned that the citizens are completely disregarded. The Republican legislators or the commissioners are completely not included in any kind of plan, not included in resolution making, not included in anything that's of any importance. And I don't understand how we have a whole presentation on how you're spending the American Rescue Plan when in fact the minutes that were approved here do not reflect what really happened on June 30th. On June 30th, the Democratic Caucus Committee, which was originally scheduled at 5 o'clock, was changed that day to 3:30.
Ms. Kennedy,
And then there was a Finance Committee
speaking to items on
shoved
the
in
agenda?
between to,
Ms. Kennedy, do you want to comment on items on the agenda? Or?
well, the agenda involves giving needles to people now. We've got that on the agenda. Is that one you want to comment on? But the entire American Rescue Plan is $244 million coming to our county that you totally disregarded how the citizens would like to have the money spent. It's been totally ignored. And there's not been a single discussion that involves citizens. And I just sat through a Democratic caucus meeting today from 3:30 to 6, and they not only decided all the different categories they're going to spend, they even decided who's going to lead each of those different categories of spending for committees that are not formal meetings but study groups, so they don't have to involve the Open Meetings Act, even though it's all of our money, $5,400 plus. Every single man, woman, child paid for that $1.9 trillion that the federal government is throwing around for everyone. And it's offensive that...
Ms. Kennedy, please keep your comments related to items on the agenda. Otherwise, you can come and speak during public comment in the next portion.
I think it is the budget. I think it's all about the budget. You got all these dollars, and you're spending so much on the refugees and immigrants, and the HUD funds and the award letters specifically prohibit paying for non-citizens with those dollars. Yet every single category, you can go to the OakGov webpage on workforce development and see they are getting rid of 3 felonies and unlimited misdemeanors as part of their program for improving safety. And you've also got all the refugees and immigrants. There's a whole page on all the things we're providing free for them. Food, housing, legal, everything. And these are things I've never had myself. I've paid for them for plenty of people apparently, but this is just an offensive affront of the citizens. You're just ignoring the citizens completely. We don't want a transformation of our government. We don't want a transformation of our county. We actually have a pretty decent county, and we used to be well known nationally for fiscal responsibility and citizen respect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to Laura. Laura. Is it consignment? Is it to speak on anything on the agenda? I mean Melissa Williams.
I'll wait till the end.
Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on items on the consent agenda or the regular agenda? Seeing none, I will declare this portion of public comment closed, and we'll move to reports of standing committees. And first up is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda? Moved by Commissioner Gingell, seconded by Commissioner Powell. Is there any discussion on any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the consent agenda.
On the consent agenda, Commissioners Gershenson? Yes. Gingell? Yes. Hoffman?
Yes.
Jackson? Yes. Joliet? Yes. Kokendorfer?
Yes.
Kowal?
Yes.
Kuhn?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Lubes?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Moss?
Yes.
Nelson? Yes. Powell?
Yes.
Spiz?
Yes.
Wiper?
Yes.
Woodward?
Yes.
Cavell?
Yes.
Charles? Yes. Mr. Chair, you have 21 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voted in the affirmative. The consent agenda is adopted. That will move us to the regular agenda. There is no business under economic development and infrastructure that was taken up in the consent agenda. So I will bring us to the Finance Committee, and I will call on Commissioner Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to introduce a resolution number 21XXX in regarding the Board of Commissioners revised fund balance policy for the general fund. This is the policy whereby we're stating that 25% of our general fund is to be set aside 3 months of expenditures to be our county's rainy day fund. And I move this resolution.
Moved by Commissioner Markham, seconded by Commissioner Long. I believe there are a few amendments that have been submitted, so I will start with the one that appears first in the packet here. And I believe it's Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind, I'd like for Commissioner Moss to go first with his amendment. Thank you.
Certainly. Commissioner Moss.
Okay. Stand up here rather than these plexiglass box here. Mine is really very simple, and I appreciate the good hard work of the executive and also our chair to get rid of any structural deficit or one-time money being used for ongoing funds. Here's my issue, though, is that we have a lot of money in the funds here, fund balance. And I'm not as comfortable with what seems to be the philosophy of taking 30%, we've got a rainy day fund, other risks, which I guess if a meteor hits or whatever, which is a good thing, you never know, and then taking the rest for strategic investments, because the word strategic investments can cover a lot of stuff.
I don't mean to interrupt you. So you're moving your amendment, seconded by...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Spiz. You jumped right into it. I didn't know when. I was trying to find my opportunity to get in there. Okay.
No, you're right.
I moved by Commissioner Moss, seconded by Commissioner Spiz. Commissioner Moss, please continue.
Thank you. My father was in marketing for Dow Chemical, and he once told me that if you can spin consumption as investment, you can sell darn near everything, and he didn't say that approvingly. And I'm looking at where we're talking priority areas for one-time strategic investments. And there's a lot in there that can be, shall we say, somewhat soft. Now, I'm not going to go, I think my first iteration of the amendment involved actual monetary result. I'm willing to drop that. But we want to be a little bit more, I think, careful, put more teeth into the restrictions on the use of the fund balance. We have an awful lot of fund balance. And using it simply as a rainy day fund, it's not enough. We've got a lot of principle here. Now, when you're talking about money, for instance, there's a term called equity, and we're talking about equity right now as sort of a synonym for equality, but this is something else. This is a financial term, and it means a wealth that is retained by the entity, in this case, the County of Oakland. It's instead of shareholders' equity, we'll call it citizens' equity. And this money has been saved up, and it's been kind of kept intact. And I sure hate to see it getting spent even on one-time things. So we've got to be very careful about this, which is why I wanted to put in documented and objective return on investment. Now, I'm sure that you can't quantify everything with numbers and dollars and cents, but we should be a little bit more careful than simply spending it down. And the reason why to this is that we have a lot of, I think, very good sentiments on the part of the administration talking about this, and I'm quite impressed by that. But then you get down to the legislature here, which is us. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm going to be dunking on the Democratic side about this, but actually, believe it or not, the most egregious rate on fund balance came from the Republican side when I was back here the first time around. And some of you remember Chuck Palmer is a great guy, good fella, very conservative Republican, but he wanted to take the fund balance and rebate it to the county sort of as declaring a dividend. Well, Brooks Patterson and Bob Dada, when they got off the floor, said, nix on that, and Lori Van Pelt went around talking to people. So really, the temptation to spend this can come from both sides of the aisle. And so I'm proposing this, and I've been told that this is just mere wordsmithing. Well, it's not as if I haven't smithed some words over the years, but in this case, I think that it's really, I think it would be a good idea for all of us, our side, the executive, to put as many teeth into the idea that the fund balance is not simply estate left to us by, our rich Uncle Brooks, but that it's principal, it's equity, and it should be kept there and used as principal whenever possible. And leverage is perhaps, or investment income perhaps, but to be, once again, extremely, extremely careful about what we use and make sure that we get it back. So I'm proposing and moving that that this motion be amended to say documented and objective return on investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Moss. Any further discussion? I would just say, and I had an opportunity to talk to Commissioner Moss, and I agree with you. Like any use of fund balance has we as the fiduciary body have a responsibility to vet, discuss, debate, and approve. And as the governing body of Oakland County that's adopting said policy and how to allocate fund balance outside the scope of that's defined for a rainy day or a natural disaster or some other grave event. The policy as it's currently written, I think definitely achieves that. It says in general for those other strategic investments that Kyle, Jen, and the executive outlined in the presentation. In general, use of fund balance should be limited to one-time expenditures, such as for capital projects or projects for limited duration that have measurable benefits for county operations and residents, and goes on and actually explains that more in detail. I think that is very sufficient. Any proposal that comes forward requires this body's approval. I know that the leadership of our Finance Committee and all the Finance Committee members will consider proposals that are brought forward and thoroughly vet them. And I am confident that this body can, as it has traditionally in this county, regardless of majority at the moment, come to an outcome that is appropriate, responsible, and ensures that we continue to stay steadfast on our fiscal responsibilities, which is to have the strongest budget and fund balance in the state. So I'm going to be opposed to this amendment. I think that the focus is accomplished already as it's currently written, and I believe the Finance Committee did a good job of bringing forth the policy that I can support. So I will be voting no on the amendment. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the amendment.
On the Moss Amendment, Commissioners Gingell? Yes. Hoffman?
Yes.
Jackson? No. Joliet? Yes. Kokendorfer?
Yes.
Kowal?
Yes.
Kuhn?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Lubes?
No.
Markham?
No.
McGilvray?
No.
Miller?
No.
Moss?
Yes.
Nelson? Powell?
No.
Spiz?
Yes.
Weipert?
Yes.
Woodward?
No.
Cavell?
No.
Charles?
No.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No.
All right, thank you. Gershenson?
No.
Mr. Chair, you have 10 yeas, 11 nays.
An insufficient number voting in the affirmative, the amendment fails. I think that brings us to the Kowal amendment. Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and what Commissioner Moss said. But in addition, I feel as well
Commissioner
that...
Kowal moves the amendment, seconded
Yes,
by
I move the
Commissioner
amendment
Spiz.
to insert the following language after the now therefore it be resolved to state, be it further resolved that all appropriations from the general fund balance shall require a 2/3 majority vote of members elected and serving on the Board of Commissioners. I just feel like, once again, we're using the public's equity here, and these are discretionary expenses. And I think that we should be setting the bar a little bit higher as far as approval to make sure that these funds are used, for the best use for all county residents. And I just move that I think that a 2/3 majority of the commissioners voting to approve these sets just a higher level of scrutiny on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kowal. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the Kowal amendment, Commissioners Hoffman?
Yes.
Jackson? Joliet? Yes. Kokendorfer?
Yes.
Kowal?
Yes.
Kuhn?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Lubes?
No.
Markham?
No.
McGilvray?
No.
Miller?
No.
Moss?
Yes.
Nelson? Powell?
No.
Spiz?
Yes.
Wipert?
Yes.
Woodward?
No.
Cavell?
No.
Charles?
No.
Gershenson?
No.
Gingell? Mr. Chair, you have 10 yeas, 11 nays.
An insufficient number voting in the affirmative, the amendment fails. I believe we have one more amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Markham?
I have an amendment, revised fund balance policy for the general fund. In the attached fund balance policy, add the follow-on strikeout and insert the following language on page 2. Did everybody get a copy of this? Okay.
So moved
So
by
I move
Commissioner
that
Markham,
amendment.
seconded by Commissioner Charles. This basically adds that very last bullet point to include matching grant funding for priority local infrastructure projects like tri-party and bi-party to be eligible expenses.
Correct.
All right. Any further discussion? Commissioner Moss. Commissioner Moss. I said Moss. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Gee,
I'm behind
I,
a plastic shield. Yes, Commissioner
Well,
Moss.
I defer to, gee, I'd say this is Exhibit A for my amendment, but all right, thank you very much.
All right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the amendment.
Just a reminder, if you could please turn on your microphones when you are saying your votes, because it's hard to hear some of you, especially with the layers of plexiglass throughout the room. So thank you. On the Markham amendment, Commissioners Jackson,
Yes.
Joliet,
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn.
Yes.
Was that a
Yes.
yes? Okay, sorry, hard to hear you. Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Moss.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Nelson,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Wipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Cavell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Gingell,
Yes.
Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 21 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative, the amendment is adopted. That brings us back to the main motion. Commissioner Spiz.
Mr. Chair, I do have one additional request for an amendment. It's not in your packet. It's a simple one-word amendment. On page 602 of your packet, the last sentence, which is on page 1 of the policy. I can have it written up if you need to, but basically simple as changing the word should to shall. So it reads, right after rainy day fund, should be no less than 25% of the annual ongoing operating expenditures. Change the word should to shall. So it should read shall be no less than 25%, is my request for an amendment.
So moved by Commissioner Spiz, seconded by Commissioner Gingell. Normally we have, and I think we can waive the procedure. That's a very simple one-word thing to change the word should to shall. All right. Sounds like a great idea, Commissioner Spiz. So all in favor of adopting that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Madam Clerk, why don't you call the roll on the amendment?
On the Spiz amendment.
Is there discussion?
Oh, sure. Discussion? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I did not call discussion on the amendment, so that's my bad. Commissioner Charles.
So yeah, after having many, many study sessions where we debated on shall and may and should, I would be more comfortable if there was a nod of affirming that that doesn't change the brevity of the paragraph.
I believe I had that nod. I mean, the change. I mean, I guess the question, Commissioner Charles, you're asking, like changing shall to, or should to shall, doesn't change the intent of that policy to have a rainy day fund be at the percent that's laid out in there. Right. And I believe the answer is yes. And Kyle Jen, our fiscal services, gives the thumbs up, and so it does not change anything stylistic. And some people have very strong feelings about the word, so I think we can support it. Thank you. All right, let's try that one more time. All in favor of adopting the amendment, say aye. 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 Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the amendment is adopted unanimously. So any further discussion on the policy? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the new fund balance policy.
Okay. On the resolution,
On the resolution.
Commissioners Joliet,
Yes.
Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes, Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Weipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Cavell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Gingell, Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 21 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative. The resolution is adopted. Commissioner Markham, is that
That concludes my report for this evening. Thank you, Mr.
all right?
Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I will now call up the Chair of the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee, Commissioner Kristen Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one item on the regular agenda today. It is the Board of Commissioners' appointment to the Building Authority. Chairman, I move to recommend the acceptance of the foregoing report.
Commissioner Nelson moves the report, seconded by Commissioner Hoffman. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting the report, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Let the record reflect that the report is received unanimously.
Mr. Chair, on behalf of the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee, I move to recommend the reappointment of Emerson Jackson to the Building Authority for a 3-year term beginning January 1st of 2021 through December 31st of 2023.
Moved by Commissioner Nelson, seconded by Commissioner Hoffman. Any discussion on the appointment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the appointment, Commissioners Kokendorfer,
Yes.
Kowal,
Yes.
Kuhn,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Lubes,
Yes.
Markham,
Yes.
McGilvray,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Moss,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Spiz,
Yes.
Weipert,
Yes.
Woodward,
Yes.
Cavell,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Gershenson,
Yes.
Gingell, Hoffman,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Joliet.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 21 yeas, 0 nays.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative. The appointment is confirmed.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the reports of the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. That will move us into reports to special committees. There are none. Special order
Mr. Chair, missed one.
I skipped over Penny. I apologize. I would like to call up the chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee, Chair Commissioner Penny Lubes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one resolution regarding the Sheriff's Office 2021 Snowmobile Law Enforcement Program Grant Application.
Moved by Commissioner Lubes, seconded by Commissioner Gingell. Any discussion? Commissioner Cavell.
Hi. You can hear me okay? I've been told my mic is too loud. All right. I'm voting no on this because this does not seem like a prudent use of county funds, and this also seems like an incipient way to grow a budget through saying, receiving grant applications or receiving grants after applying for them and saying, we need you to just chip in a little bit. And the next year coming back saying, hey, look, we used to get more money and now we need you to chip in a little bit more. This is how the Marine unit went from being fully funded by the state to being now mostly funded by the county. I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lube, followed by Commissioner Hoffman.
I would like to report that this grant application was for $70,000 for 2 snowmobiles and 6 helmets. Our sheriff department uses the snowmobiles in our county parks. We have over 3,700 acres open to snowmobiles in our park. And the county was responsible for 15% of this money, which was almost $11,000. So $11,000 with the grant for 2 snowmobiles and 6 helmets to help and assist our snowmobilers in Oakland County, I think is a good deal.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hoffman, followed by Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you. I just want to point out that this is a grant application. This money's not coming out of the general fund. It will be used for search and rescue. Heaven forbid we'd ever have to use it, but as it's already been stated, it'd be used in the county parks and the lakes within Oakland County. Thank you.
Yeah. And Commissioner Hoffman, you're absolutely right. This is the grant application. It does require a 15% match if we get so I mean, it will have some obligation, but you're right. This is an application for money to do this. Commissioner Kowal.
I would, thank you. I'd like to address the whole Marine Safety Patrol issue, and I think it's the commissioner from Ferndale is comparing apples and oranges when he looks at this, because our marine safety was supposed to be almost 50% funded through our voter registration fees, and it was until the DNR and at the state level they decided to change the formula. And even though Oakland County has the most voter registrations in Oakland County, they decided, well, just because you have a boat in Oakland County, you register, it doesn't mean it stays there. So I could argue that all day long. I tried to get it changed when I was there. But out of, the sheriff has done his best to maintain this because he believes in, obviously, safety on the roads and in your life in general and on the water as well. But it has gotten to the point where some legislation needs to be enacted in Lansing to correct this. But in the meantime, I do know that a lot of the lake associations are providing this protection on the lakes. We have, I don't know how many lakes in Oakland County. This money is desperately needed, but I think trying to, I agree with what the commissioner said about the, how we end up paying more and more, but we do have a Gosling amendment in that all our resolutions to cover that, and like Commissioner Hoffman said, this is an application. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion? Commissioner McGilvery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be voting in favor of this, and the reason being is if it's one of my kids out in the field that's lost and I want the sheriffs to search for him, I want to give them every opportunity to be able to save any person's life. And I think snowmobile, because we live in Michigan and we do have snow, is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay. On the resolution, Commissioners Kowal?
Yes.
Kuhn?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Lubes?
Yes.
Markham?
Yes.
McGilvray?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Moss?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Spiz?
Yes.
Weipert?
Yes.
Woodward?
Yes.
Cavell?
No.
Charles?
Yes.
Gershenson?
Yes.
Gingell? Hoffman?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Joliet?
Yes.
Kogendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 20 yeas, 1 nay.
Sufficient number voting in the affirmative. The resolution, special committees, there is none. Special order of business, none. Unfinished business, none. New and miscellaneous business, Commissioner Spiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I offer miscellaneous resolution for assignment of American Rescue Plan Act local fiscal recovery funds for a matching grant program to local cities, villages, and townships to plan for critical infrastructure projects. Refer to economic development and infrastructure.
Referred without objection. And I believe that was the only resolution that we were introducing today. So next will be the second part of public comment. This is the opportunity for any members of the public. I'll start again with the list to speak on topics that were not on the consent or the regular agenda tonight. And I ask you again, keep your comments to 3 minutes. Point out the clock again. If you get to the 3 o'clock mark, the 3-minute mark, I'll ask you kindly to wrap up your comments so that everyone who wishes to address the board can do so this evening. So I'm going to start with Richard Ensley.
Good evening. I'd like to ask, would it be possible that I wait until the rest of the commissioners return? I'm not sure where they went.
Pardon?
Can I ask that I wait to begin until the remainder of the commissioners return to their seats? We had some that left the room.
I'll move on to the next person if you want to wait till, I can call you up at the end.
I'm just asking that I actually be heard. I've sat through for, over 2 hours, so I didn't go anywhere.
Mr. Ensley, you have an opportunity to address. This is recorded and live and documented for the rest of time, so.
Okay, let's go.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Woodward. On June 30th, many of your neighbors again appealed to this board to vote on a resolution to stop the medical discrimination of Oakland County residents. Following the testimony of countless citizens whose lives have been dramatically altered from this discrimination, you, Mr. Woodward, told the room it's time to move on. You said it was outside the jurisdiction of Oakland County to vote on such a resolution. This is simply not true. In fact, multiple Michigan counties have discussed and passed resolutions aiming to restrict this type of discrimination in their counties. You said, this is the county seat where we do the county business. Yet you have also passed resolutions in support of state legislation banning other forms of discrimination in workplaces, including, most recently, race-based discrimination of hairstyles in miscellaneous resolution number 21192. Like you, I am opposed to racism, and I'm also opposed to discrimination that is causing people to lose their jobs on the basis of their choice to not receive an experimental procedure that has not been approved by the FDA. Commissioners, this issue will not go away, and if this Board of Commissioners is against discrimination and for the people, that is certainly not reflected in your actions. On June 17th, 10 members of this board voted against miscellaneous resolution number 21279 to simply discuss support of the COVID-19 Vaccination Privacy Act. This resolution was then referred to the Legislative Affairs and Government Operations Committee, where it has since been ignored. I request that you turn from your partisan politics and turn to what is right and fair and just. Many of your neighbors in Oakland County are losing their jobs, or they're facing undeserved penalties for simply exercising their right to refuse a vaccine. And many more will follow before the next time we stand before you. Again, we call on you to do the right thing for your friends and for your neighbors and support the banning of medical discrimination in Oakland County. Thank you.
Next up, we have Michael Gonzalez, followed by Connie Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Michael Gonzalez, and I am delivering a public comment on behalf of a resident of Oakland County. Her name is Brittany, and she works as a contracted vendor within the Trinity and Henry Ford Health Systems. So she says, my name is Brittany, and I work as a contracted vendor within the Trinity and Henry Ford Health Systems. Both of these systems are requiring me to be vaccinated come September 21st in order to do business with their facilities. My company is not currently mandating vaccination in order to keep employment. However, I'm being told that I have to comply with these healthcare system policies in order to maintain business. Is it right for a company to ask me to inflict possible bodily harm to myself or to my family for the sake of business? I don't believe that it is. This is an experimental vaccine and it is not approved, and we cannot allow this to happen. I am not an anti-vaxxer. I believe in proven vaccines and for people to have the choice. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Connie Johnson, followed by Tori Zilch.
Good evening. My name is Connie Johnson. I've been a resident of District 8 in Oakland County for over 20 years, and I'm here to talk to you today about MCIR, M-C-I-R. Can I see a show of hands from the commission if you know what I'm talking about when I say MCIR? None of you. Okay, Michigan Childhood Immunization Registry, MCIR, was created in 1998 to collect immunization information for children given by healthcare providers. In 2006, a change to the Michigan Public Health Code enabled the MCIR to transition from a childhood immunization registry to a lifespan registry to collect all biometrics on all age groups of all people in the MCIR. It also changed the name to Michigan Care Improvement Registry. MCIR was implemented into schools as the sole means by which to report vaccination status. If you were born before 1998, you were not in the MCIR. That is until COVID hit. If you have received the COVID vaccine, you were required to sign a consent form to create an electronic health record within the MCIR. You are in the MCIR now, recorded for your vaccination. Your information is now part of that data system, which will track you for the rest of your life. It may also be used to store information such as medications that you take. If you go to a psychiatrist, your body mass index, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, erectile dysfunction, and many other very personal diagnoses. If you didn't know this, which by raise of hands, none of you knew this, then you probably feel a little bit violated, and you very well should. Your personal health information is private and important. If you have children in school, the MCIR is used as a means to report vaccination in order to attend school. This is by state statute. The COVID vaccine has not been added to that reporting. MCIR may only be used in the school setting for educational purpose. Yet, all over the state of Michigan, teachers have been asking students, are you vaccinated? And then segregating students based on their vaccination status. This is not okay. This is against federal law, this is against state law, this is discrimination, and it is unacceptable in our schools. You may also be unaware that your private health information is shared without your knowledge and consent to entities such as insurance companies, universities, and the CDC for tracking purposes. That's also connected to the VAERS, which is the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. It isn't much of a leap to understand that the only thing standing between your private data and a vaccine or health passport is the sharing of this existing data.
Ms. Johnson, please.
I would like to end by saying that the preventing medical discrimination against Oakland County residents, this resolution should not only be supported, but it should be applauded. And if you are for discrimination, then you would vote against it. If you are against discrimination, you would support this resolution. And I would ask that the board please put the resolution on the agenda and keep it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to Tori Zilch, followed by Melissa Williams, and then Laura Assignment.
Good evening. My name is Victoria Zilch, and as you just learned from Connie, the MCIR reporting database reports directly to the VAERS federal site. VAERS federal site, excuse me. I want to give some validity to this to VAERS. According to their website, this is a direct quote. Healthcare providers are required by law to report to VAERS any adverse event listed in the VAERS table of reported events following vaccination that occurs within the specified time period after vaccinations. So that's one thing that they're required to report. Second, an adverse reaction or an adverse event listed by the vaccine manufacturer as a contraindication to further doses of the vaccine. So did you know that healthcare providers administering the vaccine would also report to MICR and/or VAERS upon receiving a death certificate that occurred within the specific time period after the vaccine? So my point here is that the numbers that are reported on the site say something, and they do actually hold weight, contrary to some other belief. Yet, others can report to the VAERS system, and I know some people have concerns about that. Anyone could, I could. But it is a violation of federal law to knowingly file a false VAERS report according to the U.S. Code 1001. So if you are to knowingly file a false claim, this is punishable by fine and imprisonment. Again, this is taken right off of their website. So healthcare workers are required by law to report, and anyone who knowingly files a false claim will be imprisoned and fined. This is not insignificant, and this tells me that there is validity in these numbers. So this is one portion. But what is more shocking, though, is to learn that the adverse reactions and the adverse events are severely underreported. So there is a study done by the Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, and I have a copy if any of you would like to see it. Fewer than 1% of vaccine adverse reactions and events are reported, fewer than 1%. Low reporting rates preclude or slow the identification of problem drugs and vaccines that endanger public health. That is a direct quote from this study. And then when I heard this week that a whistleblower from inside of the federal government database came forward to allege that death rates that she had been monitoring are much higher than what VAERS and the media are telling people, I was overwhelmed. This whistleblower is claiming that the death count is at 45,000 or higher. 45,000 people or higher dying from this vaccine. And this is the data that is being covered up. In response, attorney Thomas Renz has filed a lawsuit last week in Alabama. So there are real reasons as to why there is concern about this experimental vaccine, and these claims are not baseless. It is alarming, to say the least. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Williams, followed by Laura Consignment.
Good evening, Chairman and County Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman, for advocating for your people. As a County Commission Board, the legislative body of our county, you have the opportunity to put in place a resolution to protect the county and prevent yourselves, your children, and our hardworking healthcare professionals, all of us really, from experiencing discrimination because of our medical status. What can a resolution to prevent medical discrimination produce for our county? We have the opportunity to protect our medical freedoms against federal and state mandates and possible data breaches that we heard about from the MCIR. By placing a clear boundary at the county line, the County Commission Board controls what comes in and stays out of our health committees, our local health departments, and is part of the checks and balances in our state and our federal constitutions against federal and state overreach. Mr. Woodward, you've said that the county has no plans to have vaccination passports, but the same was said to the people in England. But this week, vaccination passports, and I'm sure along with all of their other medical personal information, is being introduced by their national government. Currently, millions are protesting in the streets of Greece, France, and now in England, demanding the resignation of their leaders. As a county, we can take a stand in writing that we will not tolerate medical discrimination. If by taking the COVID-19 shot and consenting to adding our private health information to a database like MCIR, tracking us for the rest of our lives, who's to say that your health information won't disqualify you to run for office if you're taking depression medication, or you're having cancer treatment, or you're receiving substance abuse treatment? What about the students who aren't allowed to be in sports or classrooms because of their health status, whether it's masking or testing or vaccination? This commission must take a stand to uphold the current laws and say that you will not allow discrimination at the county level for any reason. This resolution is a public proclamation. I know that it can't be a law, but it's a clear statement to our county and the state and the federal level that we value our human rights and constitutional freedoms, privacy to make our own medical decisions, and to retain our bodily autonomy. There are signs on businesses all over our county. If you're not fully vaccinated, wear a mask with our own county logo. If you have the authority to design and distribute signs using our tax dollars, then you have the authority, and it should be put to use by proclaiming through this resolution that Oakland County will not tolerate discrimination based on any health status. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Laura Consignment, followed by Sandra Caroline. Caroline.
Sorry to let you stumble through my name. I should have put it on. I'm Laura Tuzian. Thanks for having me today. I am a registered nurse, have been for 7 years. Most of that time has been spent in the ICU, and I hold certification in adult critical care. The better part of the pandemic, better would not be the right word, but I'm a little nervous and tired from my newborn, you might have heard. I worked as a charge nurse in the COVID ICU as well as a staff nurse in 3 other hospitals. I'm a wife, I'm a mom. I share these details not to bore you, maybe because I'm a little nervous, but to prove I'm a person, and we all are. We're all individuals, we're all multidimensional, and so is our health status. There's no one-size-fits-all solution in healthcare, and vaccines are no exemption to this. In the ICU, we have protocols to ensure safety. At the end of them is a disclaimer that says there will be patients that deviate from this. Use your discretion. Look for an expert opinion. Hospital administrators and physicians expect outliers and write guidelines that acknowledge this. Our vaccine policy should not be different. I have seen life-altering consequences, including death, when patients with common medications like aspirin or Tylenol are taken in the wrong situation. There is no medicine or treatment without risk. It's for this reason I think it's best that individuals get to choose their vaccination status, not legislators or companies, including healthcare entities in this county. Vaccine mandates deny individuals the opportunity to weigh risk and benefits that we all take for granted when consenting to medical care. Patients have a right to refuse things. This is very hard. We don't always agree with this. I hate to see a patient refuse intubation or cancer treatment when I think they can be saved, but it's not my place. My personal and professional opinion is irrelevant. Patients have the right to change their mind. A patient can decide they don't want a Tylenol this morning and in the afternoon ask me for one. That is not a prior refusal does not set precedent. Each treatment or administration is a separate encounter. Likewise, an employee should have the decision to vaccinate or decline vaccination regardless of previous immunization history. Health systems are not treating their employees like we treat our patients. As a result, our medical freedoms are on life support. We're at an intersection here at bodily autonomy and employer overreach. Presently, I find myself between taking a vaccine without longitudinal research, especially while breastfeeding, or losing a job I love. A job that is critically important and tragically still very much in demand. My loyalty to employer, my sacrifices in the front lines, and my insight from working on the front lines are apparently disposable. I fail to see how my desire to let my body heal from a difficult recovery, nursing my child, and waiting for more data warrants termination. Because especially with this timeline, I don't have time for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sandra Caroline, followed by Steve.
Yes, I would like to thank the gentleman and the representatives who said that they thought that we should be able to speak earlier because we are here for a situation of life and death. People have died. I feel that I am not a person who normally would make this comment, but my body, my choice. Whatever happened to that? HIPAA, privacy, whatever happened to that? I want to thank you for being here. Interestingly enough, I was here for your compensation plans and all your budget plans. I have been paying your salary since 1988 as a longtime resident of Oakland County. And I'd like to know if you could please raise your hand if you know and are able to explain to your constituents who Carrie Mullis is. Does anyone in the front know who Carrie Mullis is? Nobody. Does anyone here know who Carrie Mullis is? He is the man who invented the PCR test that you're funding. He is dead now. He was an opponent of Fauci, and he died of pneumonia just before this whole fiasco started. He said that this test could find anything in anyone if the CT level was set high enough. Does anyone here know what Oakland County set the CT levels at? Were they consistent between testing sites? Does anyone know what the CT levels, the tests you took to prove that you were negative? There's false positives, there's false negatives, and yet my grandson was denied schooling because he was in contact with a person who tested positive. My brother-in-law canceled his 50th anniversary plans because he tested positive. He went to another test center and tested negative several days later. He's in the UP. Does anybody know who Dr. Robert Malone is in the front? Does anybody know who Dr. Malone is in the back? He is the person who invented the mRNA, which is not a vaccine. Please don't call it one anymore, anybody back here. It is a gene-based therapy. It is an experimental use authorization. We are no longer, emergency use authorization. You are here today, we're not on Zoom except for this one gentleman. We are not in an emergency right now. We should not be acting as if we are. Constantly vaccinating people. Does anybody know who Michael Yeadon is? Up here? Back here? Michael Yeadon? He is a former VP of Pfizer Corporation. He has come out and said, do not take these shots. This is dangerous. In a pandemic, this should not be used as a prophylactic. And so I would encourage you to do your homework. These are your bodies. I don't know how many of you have received this vaccine, but I know that I want it to be my choice, and I don't want my friends losing their jobs in healthcare or in first-line responders because they refuse to take an experimental, unproven, unsafe, and ineffective, because you can transmit. Obviously, that's why you all still have your plexiglass up, and it does not keep you from
Caroline,
getting the disease like a true vaccine does.
Thank you. Thanks. Steve, and I apologize, Steve, Steve S.
Sorry about that. I hope I speak a little bit better than that, right? So, thanks for coming, everybody. It's been a great evening, I'm sure. Now, does everybody remember 2 weeks to flatten the curve? It's been a pretty long 2 weeks, I think. Now, at the time, it made sense. We didn't know what was going on. Nobody had an idea. There was no long-term data, let alone when that started coming in. H1n1 vaccine. Anybody remember that? Permanent neurological disorders. People developing narcolepsy from it. Does anybody know of thalidomide? It was a common medication to help people go to sleep. This was, I don't know, maybe in the 60s. Thank you. Took about till the next generation for the effects of this to start appearing. You had children being born, those that survived, with terrible deformities. Swine flu, anybody remember that one? 60 deaths, they pulled the vaccine. So when we didn't know what was going on, it made sense for 2 weeks to stop the spread. Now we have a better idea, and I support people's right to seek out experimental, life-saving medical treatments, but not to mandate them. That's all I got.
Thank you. That's the last person that signed up on the sheet. I don't know if there's anyone back there, so if anybody else that would like to speak during public comment on any topic, please come up to the podium and give your name and city, or place where you live, and we'd love to hear from you.
I will say something.
Welcome.
My name's Kathy Kubik.
Nope, just like, wait for the mic.
Okay, well, I have a loud mouth, but my name is Kathy Kubik, and I spoke last time, and I thought maybe some of you would see that this is so horrible that our country is demanding something be put in our bodies. Did you ever think this would ever happen before? Ever. And you guys are sitting there saying, it's okay, you'll live. How do we know? Just as that man just said, how do we know? I never thought our country would come this way. As I said last time, this was the greatest country in the world. I hope you guys will do the right thing. Why can't we, Great Oakland County, stop this? Why can't you, Mr. Woodward? I think that's your name. I'm terrible on names. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak during public comment? Going once, going twice. Oh, welcome. State your name.
I'll be brief. My name is Gay Long. I've done a little bit of research on this. There are more people that have died of this vaccine in less than a year than have died of all other vaccines from the time it began. We need to put a stop to that. They should not be required. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further people for public comment? Seeing none, we'll declare public comment closed and bring it back here. Next item on the agenda is announcements. Are there any further announcements? Any announcements from commissioners? Seeing none, I will declare this meeting adjourned to our August 5th, 2021 meeting at 6 p.m. Be safe, everyone. Good night. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.